I am 42 years old, my wife is 40, and our son, who is now 18, has just graduated from military school. During all this, he was still in school, but now he graduated from it, received a military rank, and began to serve. We've been together for 20 years. It's hard to believe, but after those first days when we were constantly fighting and adjusting to each other, we kind of got into a rhythm. We have each other, you know. There was mutual respect, and of course, trust, because nothing would work without it. About 6 months ago, I started noticing a change in my wife. She'd become more, let's say, lively in the bedroom. Naturally, I wasn't complaining, but I couldn't help feeling something was up. Then one night, she suggested we try something she'd always been firmly against before. I was stunned. Curious, I asked what made her change her mind. And she just said, "Time's passing by, and I want to experience new things." The weekend was fast approaching, and my friend's birthday was around the corner. He'd invited both of us, of course. Oddly enough, my wife wasn't thrilled about the idea. That morning, she dove into cleaning and cooking, but there was no saying no. She slipped into a beautiful dress, paired it with stockings, which was a surprise in itself since she rarely ever wore them. Time's ticking, and the taxi's almost here. She's all dolled up, looking absolutely stunning. I couldn't wait to hear all the compliments from our friends about how amazing she looked. Just as the car pulls up, she yells and rushes to the kitchen. Turns out, she forgot to turn off the borscht. I'm standing there, waiting while she deals with that. After a few calls from me, she hurries out, all smiles, and off we go. But here's the kicker. We hadn't even driven a few blocks before she announces she forgot to turn it off again, completely distracted. "You go ahead, and I'll just run back real quick to turn it off. I'll catch up in no time." So we stopped, and she hopped out. At first I went along with it, but then it hit me. Wait a second. I wanted to show up with my wife, for everyone to see what a stunning, gorgeous woman she is. And honestly, I hate waiting. There's nothing worse than playing catch-up. So I told the taxi driver, "Let's turn around and pick her up." He shrugged, saying it's fine, but that I'd need to toss in another 100. I agreed. We got to the first intersection. The driver spun the car around, and we headed back. I quickly ran up to the 3rd floor, unlocked the door, and stepped inside, calling out for my wife. No response. Then I noticed her coat draped over the chair, and her purse just lying there on the bed. I thought, maybe she's in the bathroom or something. Nope, not there either. So I dial her number, and wouldn't you know it, her phone's ringing from her purse. Weird. All her stuff's here, but where's she? I check the kitchen. Borscht's still on the stove, but the gas is off. 5 minutes pass, then 10, then 20, and the driver starts calling. I figured, fine, I'll let him go and head down. I'm walking down to the 2nd floor, and then, just like something out of a movie, one of the apartment doors creaks open, and out comes my wife, followed by our young neighbor, 27, married, by the way. For a moment, we all just stand there, speechless. Then my wife breaks the silence, saying, "I just went to borrow some salt." I looked at her and replied, "Yeah, you went so far that your hair's all messed up and your lipstick's smudged, in heels and stockings, no less. And why do we even need salt? We went shopping just 2 days ago, and you bought plenty. Oh, and where's this salt you supposedly went to get?" She mumbled something about her thyroid and needing extra salt. But I wasn't listening anymore. I turned around, went downstairs, got in the taxi, and headed off to my friend's birthday. When I got there, I told him my wife wasn't feeling well and couldn't make it, though in reality she had wanted to come. My wife called me nonstop that evening, but I ignored every call, and apparently she didn't have the guts to come find me. After the birthday party, I booked a hotel, turned my phone off, and slept through until noon the next day. I didn't get home until evening. When I walked in, my wife was visibly shaken. trying to kiss me, but I pulled away, which clearly threw her off. She even had the nerve to ask things like, "What's going on? Why didn't you pick up? Where have you been all this time?" I wanted to get to the bottom of things, so I calmly asked her to be straight with me. Just tell me everything honestly. I'm not some naive teenager who's going to be easily fooled. But she denied everything, and with some twisted sense of pride, even offered me her phone to check for any suspicious numbers. I just shook my head. "I'm not gonna go through your phone. Maybe I'll just head over to the neighbors for some salt instead." That's when she completely lost it, having a full-blown meltdown. But even then, she refused to confess to anything. When I moved towards the door, she blocked my way, saying I'd have to step over her dead body to get past. I gently picked her up by the shoulders, moved her out of the way, and headed out, despite her crying and literally trying to hold me back. There wasn't much of a conversation with the neighbor. I just asked him how long it had been going on. When he hesitated, I said I'd go straight to his wife if he didn't answer. They've got 2 kids, and the youngest is just a few months old. Eventually, he confessed, it had been going on for almost 6 months. I didn't care to hear the rest. I was hurt, angry, and felt utterly betrayed. Part of me wanted to explode, to make a scene, to scream at my wife. But I also wanted answers. It's no coincidence that she suddenly showed interest in new things in bed. I'm sure she first tried them with her lover, that young father of 2. I still don't know how I managed to hold it together and avoid causing a scene. Probably because my wife stayed quiet. First, she locked herself in the bathroom for what felt like ages, then lingered in the kitchen, and finally, she retreated to the bedroom, barely moving. I think if she had uttered a single word, I would have exploded, saying things I couldn't take back. Naturally, we slept in separate rooms that night. We eventually divorced. The official reason: irreconcilable differences. She moved in with her cousin, while I stayed in the apartment. It was an inheritance, and not subject to division. After that, life settled into a routine. But the emptiness that followed me after the divorce wouldn't leave me in peace. We'd spent 20 years together. That's a big chunk of anyone's life. I had grown used to her presence, her habits, even the sound of her voice. At first, despite the hurt and the bitterness, it felt strange coming home to an empty apartment. No one to greet me after work, no dinner waiting on the table. I threw myself into work, trying to fill that void. But come the weekends, the loneliness hit even harder. My son didn't visit often. His military service kept him busy, leaving little time for family. But his calls, even the brief ones, became my lifeline. I didn't want him to sense anything was wrong, though I had a feeling he knew more than he let on. Sometimes I caught myself reminiscing about the times when my wife and I were happy. Because, honestly, there were moments like that. You can't just erase 20 years without leaving a mark. We'd been through so much together. Our son's birth, his first steps, his first words, his graduation. But in the end, it wasn't the unshakable foundation I thought it was. Sometimes I wondered, what if I hadn't gone back for her that night? What if I just believed her story about the borscht and never saw what I did? Would we have kept living in that lie? Or would the truth have eventually surfaced, one way or another? To be honest, I wasn't sure I even wanted the answers anymore. A few months passed, and slowly life started to piece itself back together.